Hello, everybody. Welcome to At the Coalface Live, my weekly live show. Every Friday, 4 p.m. New Zealand time, I jump on here and I run through the news of the week. So it's awesome to be with you as I am every single Friday. And I've got my handy bourbon in hand with my Klarna insulated cup. So, always like to finish off the week strong. It's been a very, very busy week for me. It's been a very busy week for just about everyone in e-commerce. We took on a new client this week with Greenwood Consulting, which is super exciting. It's been a crazy year for us. Obviously, Greenwood Consulting is effectively my startup baby and has only been running this year. Just coming up in November, we'll come up to our 1 year mark of being an official consultancy, an independent consultancy. So super, super stoked about that. It is grown faster than I could have ever possibly imagined. And it's just such a great time to be in digital and e-commerce. I guess at the moment, if you're not busy, then you got to kind of wonder what you're doing wrong, because I tell you, e-commerce and digital, especially with COVID, have absolutely got a blast, a shot in the arm over the last 18 months, and it is crazier than ever. It's super exciting. Can't imagine doing anything else. I'm having a grand old time working with my clients, helping them to up their e-commerce game. But more importantly, I'm loving having more time to spend on my content like this live. Also the podcast, I'm interviewing some super, super interesting guests. I've got some absolutely piping hot episodes in the pipe for the At the Coalface podcast. So if you are not subscribed to the podcast, you definitely want to do that. I spoke with the guys, Cam over at Pay Squad today, which is a New Zealand fintech startup doing group payments for e-commerce. And there's just so many exciting things happening in the e-commerce space. It is absolutely red hot right now. VC money is flooding into the industry. Innovation is hot. Demand is high. It's crazy times. It's crazy days. As we'll see in a moment when we talk about the Shopify's quarterly financial results, we'll see that it's cooling off just very, very slightly versus perhaps the frenetic energy of e-commerce over the last sort of 6 months or so. But nevertheless, we are at an elevated level of e-commerce demand in the world right now. And even with the world largely slowly coming out of lockdowns, apart from New Zealand and Australia, the notable exceptions there, pretty much the rest of the world is coming to terms with COVID, learning how to live with it, accepting that it's endemic in the environment, and getting on with life. And despite the fact that physical retail is starting to open up around the world, we are still seeing massively elevated demand for e-commerce, and particularly across e-commerce around verticals that typically haven't always been strong with e-commerce. So the likes of grocery, the likes of B2B, etc. We're seeing elevated demand for e-commerce in those verticals, in those business models. So it is a very, very exciting time to be working in this space, and I literally cannot imagine doing anything else. It's awesome to be with you here today. As per usual, just pop your comments, your questions, etc. into whatever platform you're watching this live on, whether that be Facebook, whether that be YouTube, whether that be LinkedIn. And I'll come back to those comments and questions at the end of the broadcast and get stuck into that if there are any there. So I'll go ahead and I will get into the news of the week. Now, probably the biggest news, or one of the biggest pieces of news, was the announcement overnight that Facebook has rebranded to Meta, M-E-T-A. So this is really a reflection of the change in focus by the entire Facebook brand, company, etc., and its focus on VR, AR, and XR, which is mixed reality, and all other forms of digital reality overlays. So augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality. They are going absolutely hammer and tongs at this. And if you have not had a chance yet to listen to the chat that I had recently with Brian Walker from Retail Doctor Group on his podcast on the future of retail, I've actually posted that to LinkedIn, a link to that podcast on my LinkedIn this morning. Go and check it out. I talk in great detail about the metaverse. I talk about what it means for businesses, what it means for retailers, what it means for brands, and what it ultimately means for consumers moving forward, why Facebook is so hard out going at this metaverse concept. Now, one of the pieces of news that I'll call out around this particular announcement is just how serious Facebook is about this metaverse concept. In a report from the information from March of 2021, they found that almost a fifth, so nearly 20% of all Facebook employees are working on VR and AR. That is nearly 10,000 employees working within the Reality Labs division of Facebook. In addition, CNBC announced on October the 17th that Facebook plans to hire a further 10,000 people in the EU alone to build its vision for the metaverse. So if they're successful in being able to hire as many developers as they want to work on this metaverse concept, they will soon, probably within the next 12 to 18 months, have over 20,000 people within the business working on the metaverse concept, which is all of their VR, AR, and XR programs. Now, what this tells me is that they are de-emphasizing the rest of their Facebook family of social media apps in favor of this work on the metaverse. So they're effectively saying, hey, we're going to continue to babysit our social media apps. We're going to continue to copy others. We're going to continue to innovate only as much as we are required to stay relevant and stay top of the heap when it comes to social media. But our total focus as a business is pivoting towards this concept of the metaverse. Now, like many other technologies out there in IT and e-commerce and in really computing in general, the metaverse has its roots in science fiction. It was originally a term coined by Neil Stephenson in his novel Snow Crash. It was first mentioned as the term metaverse in 1992. In that novel, it was described as a shared virtual space where users can interact, in other words, VR. And apparently, according to some report, I haven't ever read the book, but according to some reports that came out and discussed this terminology, apparently the book doesn't go into a tremendous amount of detail about what the metaverse is, but what it does do is it describes a facility of computers in the middle of the desert running the metaverse, and the novel's characters apparently hang out inside this simulation because their real lives are boring and or difficult. So obviously Zuckerberg knows that everybody's stuck at home with COVID, lockdown, etc. A lot of people are doing it tough right now. And so he's seeing the whole new future of the world being, hey, we want to live virtually because perhaps our physical life isn't what we would expect it to be. So a bit of a dystopian view, if you ask me. But anyways, Facebook is going hammer and tongs at this, and he's not slowing down anytime soon. So effectively, this is a world, if you can think about the metaverse in the terms of the Matrix, if you've seen the Matrix, or if you've seen Star Trek and the holodeck, then you are starting to grab the picture of what the metaverse is and what it means to Facebook. They want you to live inside the Facebook world at all times instead of logging in to social media apps that you pop in and pop out of at will. They want you living and spending and interacting more and more inside of this virtual world. It effectively lets you jack into a simulated world or universe via goggles, bodysuits, etc. And ultimately, the vision behind this is to be able to jack in via brain implants a la the Matrix. Now, many experts, funnily enough, many experts believe that we're actually likely in a simulation right now. And that ranges from a likelihood of 50 to 99%, depending on who you speak to that are specialists in this area. The likes of Elon Musk, Nick Bostrom, Neil deGrasse Tyson, they've all talked about the fact that it is highly likely the world as we know it today is not base reality, that it is actually us living in a computer simulation already. Because what that says is that or the theory goes behind this from I've listened to Nick, I've listened to Elon, I've listened to Neil talk about their theory about the simulation theory of humanity. And what they effectively are saying, or their reasoning behind this, is the fact that if we believe that we are not the most advanced, humanoid life type of life in the universe or in the multiverse, then it is highly likely that other beings have gotten there and gotten to this level of maturity from a technology perspective long, long before we have. And so therefore, they would have created this type of VR experience long before we ever came along, or before we ever came into being. And as a result of that, we could potentially be the creation of this advanced civilization. So there you go. Go and check out some of the talks from Elon Musk, Nick Bostrom, and Neil deGrasse Tyson on YouTube if you want to delve a little bit more down the rabbit hole of the theory of human simulation in a computer. As I said, go ahead and check out that podcast that I did with Brian Walker, because I delve into a lot more deep detail about this, and it is exciting yet terrifying technology. So go and definitely check that out. Shopify earnings. Now, as I said, Shopify earnings came in overnight. Overall, the third quarter results came in below analyst expectations as reopening of economies and stores weighed on their performance due to more spending on in-person retail, travel, entertainment, etc. versus e-com. So effectively what we're saying is, and what we're seeing is, as people are allowed back out of their houses into physical retail as a natural side effect, they'll be doing more shopping in person and less shopping online. That stands to reason. However, we're going to see continued elevated spend on e-commerce. And what Shopify did say is that the business improved throughout the quarter, as July saw the biggest dip, followed by a step up in both August and September. New merchant growth also slowed for the quarter, which is obviously bad news for Shopify, but it's still massive growth in comparison to many other platforms in the market. So I don't think they're too concerned. They also called out several Shopify items, which I've spoken to over the last couple of weeks, which is the growth in their penetration of point of sale, payments, and subscriptions. They called out the fact that POS continues to increase as a percentage of the GMV volume done across the entire Shopify platform, and it's helping Shopify to capture new merchants and offline spend as merchants adopt this omni-channel approach. And so it absolutely makes sense that if you're already running Shopify, you've got 1, 2, maybe 3 retail stores, it makes absolutely sense that instead of having this separate and disconnected point of sale system that you then have to integrate back into Shopify, why wouldn't you just run Shopify POS with Shopify payments at point of sale and online? Makes absolute sense. It's an absolute no-brainer. So I expect that to be a continued cornerstone of growth for Shopify. Another statistic that they called out in their earnings report was the fact that Shopify payments is now nearly 50% penetrated, up over 3 percentage points year over year, with increasing adoption from both Plus and international merchants. Now, that is quite staggering, considering that the compliance associated with running Shopify payments is very high. It's even higher than that of Stripe, which is Shopify payments is a white labeled version of Stripe. And so their compliance regulations at Shopify mean that there's many, many verticals that cannot use Shopify payments for their online store if they're in these verticals. And these are verticals that they call vice verticals. So we're talking about like the cannabis industry, for example. If you run a cannabis online store, you simply cannot use Shopify payments. And there's many other verticals like this that they consider vice-driven verticals that they will not touch. So it is very, very interesting to see that Shopify payments is over 50% penetrated with all of their merchants. Incredible numbers. Subscription growth outpaced broader company subscription growth with several marquee wins in the quarter, they said, including Docker. So these are the new brands that they've onboarded in the last quarter. Dockers, Spanx, Tupperware, Logitech, Kenneth Cole, Frank and Oak, as well as a few other big name brands. So they're taking over some big retail names onto the platform. Congratulations, Shopify. Well done. They called out Shopify Market's ERP program and social commerce channels as absolute winners for them over the last quarter. In fact, they called out specifically the GMV, or gross merchandise volume, over social media platforms was up 10 times year over year, 10x year over year. Wow, that's a phenomenal number. Strong traction, Facebook, Instagram, and with full Shop Pay integration for Google, including for non-Shopify merchants, they expect that to pick up steam in the fourth quarter and become a substantial revenue driver for the business. They called out the fact that their recently launched ERP program is expected to help attract some of the larger merchants and drive Plus growth, i.e. Shopify Plus, while the launch of Shopify Market should enable merchants to quickly sell cross-border. Shopify, as you would expect, absolutely has a bullish outlook on e-commerce, with the fourth quarter expected to be strong despite supply chain and inflation headwinds, which are well known in the market. They still view themselves as very well positioned to win more and more brands that are looking to take on an omni-channel presence with international expansion opportunity. So congratulations, Shopify. Very well done. Even though you came in under analyst expectations, you're still kicking goals. So congratulations. Now, the next piece of news that I will speak to is the fact that Vicinity Centers have invested in the Click Frenzy owner to power omni-channel plans. This is a story from Internet Retailing. So Vicinity Centers, which are owners of very, very large malls and outlet store chains, etc., in major centers within Australia primarily, they have partnered with and invested in the Click Frenzy owner global marketplace to grow their online capabilities and expand their omni-channel retail presence. Pardon me. It says, as part of the deal, Vicinity is taking a minority shareholding in the online business, nearly 20%. It's not insignificant. 20% is a pretty significant shareholding in the business. And they say they called out the fact that our investment in GMP and expansion into omni-channel retail introduces new in-store and online sales opportunities, while also extending the reach of our retail partners and supplementing the 340 million visits we had to our centers, i.e. physical centers and physical mall centers in financial year 2021, said Vicinity's Chief Innovation and Information Officer, Justin Mills. The detail will provide retailers with efficient shopping center-based fulfillment solutions to take advantage of our coast-to-coast physical footprint, with 66% of the Australian population living within 30 minutes of our doors. Wow, phenomenal numbers there for the Vicinity Center. So well done there. And What they're saying is this will add to Vicinity's physical retail reach by offering established e-commerce brands an audience of over 1.7 million online shoppers with data and insights via Power Retail, Click Central, and 2 of the 4 biggest weeks on the Australian online retail calendar, including Click Frenzy. So congratulations to those guys. And that really is, when you look at Power Retail, which, they've spun Click Frenzy out of Power Retail, and it's now owned by the parent company Global Marketplace. Those guys over there at Power Retail / Global Marketplace / now Vicinity Centers, absolutely leveling up their e-commerce and omni-channel game in Australia. Congratulations, guys. Very, very well done. Now, next piece of news out of internet retailing says that Australian online sales are tipped to reach $91.5 billion by 2025. That is a phenomenal number. I mean, we're talking nearly $100 billion in online sales. That is a ridiculous number. It's hard to even fathom that, actually. But they've called out the fact that Australia's e-commerce market is projected to reach that number, according to research house Global Data. According to Global Data's e-commerce analytics, their online sales in Australia grew by 16.8% last year, and the company expects them to grow by a further 13.4% this year to reach $60.6 billion. Shivani Gupta, banking and payments senior analyst at Global Data, said the high growth during the past few years has been driven by growing internet penetration, the availability of secure online payments, and an increasing number of online shoppers. Tell us something we don't know. Thank you very much, Shivani. The onset of the COVID-19 pandemic further fueled the shift online. Thank you very much. Again, tell us something we don't know. So, really, I guess what they're doing is they're taking their access to some of the global payments data and they're extrapolating this out specific to the Australian market. They didn't make any mention of New Zealand as part of the broader ANZ region. So it'll be interesting to see if Global Data comes out with any New Zealand specific forecasts over the next 6 months or so. We'll keep our eye out for that. Now, next piece of news, PayPal has said it is no longer, or it wasn't, it isn't, it is not pursuing a acquisition of Pinterest. Now, if you'll recall, last week I called out the fact that Forbes and a couple of other news outlets, Reuters and a couple of others, were saying that PayPal was in active and final negotiations in pursuing a buyout of Pinterest. And apparently that number was pegged at about $45 billion or about $70 USD per share, mostly in stock. So they're effectively going to do a stock swap to buy out Pinterest. But apparently, according to Pinterest and according to their business leadership, a formal statement from PayPal says they are definitely not pursuing a Pinterest acquisition. They didn't come out and openly say that they were never pursuing a Pinterest acquisition, but I think it's telling that they say that they are not. Perhaps they just figured this is a little bit too big of a pill for us to swallow right now. And maybe them in the media calling out that they're not pursuing this Pinterest acquisition. Perhaps they're trying to force Pinterest back to the negotiating table at a lower price. Who knows? Oh, to be a fly on the wall in those negotiations between PayPal and Pinterest. Watch this space. Now, a report out of Reuters says that Amazon's holiday quarter forecast disappoints as labor and supply issues mount. So apparently, Amazon reported on Thursday a slump in profits that it expects will continue throughout the holiday quarter as higher wages, spending to attract workers, and that diminishes the company's windfall from online shopping. Shares fell 4% in after-hours trading as a result of this report. And after it says, further goes out to outline that after a year of blockbuster results, the world's largest online retailer is facing a tougher outlook. In a tight labor market, has boosted average U.S. warehouse pay to $18 USD per hour and marketed ever bigger signing bonuses to attract blue-collar staff it needs to keep its high turnover operation humming. So, still a fantastically profitable business, still an insanely fast growing business. And certainly these challenges around the global supply chain are not unique to Amazon. So you can expect that if Amazon is hurting, everyone that is smaller than them and less advanced than them will be hurting even more. We're seeing a situation now where Amazon is talking about, they obviously already have their international planes, an international air fleet, and now they're talking about putting into service an additional seafaring fleet, so container ships, so building and buying container ships just for Amazon products and going globally. And obviously we're seeing them take over and convert warehouses into automated warehouses globally, as well as build brand new from scratch warehouses, as they are doing in Sydney right now. They are about ready to launch the largest automated Amazon warehouse in the Southern Hemisphere in Sydney later on this year. So Amazon is going hammer and tongs at their supply chain issues. They are spending billions of dollars on that. And in fact, they have called out that fact that they will continue to spend that kind of money. The company said it expects operating profit for the current quarter to be between the number was actually blanked out in the article, but it was about $3 billion, short of the $6.9 billion Amazon posted the year prior, so just under half, I guess. In its just ended third quarter, net income fell by about 50% to $3.16 billion, a first since the start of the coronavirus pandemic in the United States. Now, they've called out the fact that they will continue to invest in the supply chain. Andy Jassy, who took the helm of Amazon as CEO in July, over from Jeff Bezos, of course, he said in a statement that the company would incur several $billion worth of extra expenses in its consumer business to deal with higher shipping costs, increased wages and labor shortages, as well as obviously this expenditure on the broader supply chain, hardware, and infrastructure. So moving on from that news from Amazon, and in line with that news from Amazon, we have a report out of Inside Retail that JB Hi-Fi, which is a major home electronics retailer down here in ANZ, had a tough start to financial year 2022. And they said that the run of strong sales has hit a snag in the first quarter of financial year 2022 with depressed customer spending during lockdowns impacting both its Australian and its New Zealand business. The business said on Thursday that sales in its Australian JB Hi-Fi stores fell 7.9% during the quarter, nearly 8%. That's not insignificant. So while sales in New Zealand fell 6.4%, which is actually less than the Australian fall compared to the same period last year, sales at the Good Guys, which JB Hi-Fi also owns, fell 6.1% compared to the first quarter of FY21 and are still almost 23% higher than in financial year 20. So still up significantly over 2020, but lower than 2021. The Electronics Group's new chief executive, Terry Smart, said that the start of the year has been significantly impacted due to restrictions and store closures across its business, as we've seen across New Zealand and Australia, many lockdown stores in New South Wales, Victoria, and, of course, in our beloved Auckland. So it said the report also called out that Coles and Woolworths have predicted in recent days that the CEO, Terry Smart, expects sales to improve now that the worst of store closures and lockdowns seem to be behind Australia's major retail hubs of Sydney and Melbourne, as well as Greater Auckland in New Zealand. So watch this space. Now, eStore, which is a major logistics partner operating across Australia, so they're called eStore Logistics, and they support e-com demand with an additional $75 million fulfillment center, or FC, opening. And this was another report by Power Retail, and this makes a grand total of 8 FCs in the eStore Logistics Group. This one is based in Bankstown in Sydney. It was developed to support the ongoing demand of e-commerce, obviously in Australia, growing rapidly, and obviously eStore in particular is helping small and medium-sized retailers compete with Amazon in the area of fully automated logistics centers with robotic handling within those fulfillment centers to keep the costs down. So it says that the $75 million FC will be the second largest in its fleet, spanning 19,130 square meters. Wow, that is massive. Its largest in New South Wales. It is equipped with 77 AI-powered autonomous mobile robots, or AMRs. It plans to expand this beyond 120 AMRs in the future. These robots significantly speed up the picking and packing process and can help retailers operate using same-day delivery methods. There are 4 FCs run by eStore that feature AMRs. The 3PL company has been using the AMR technology since March of 2020, which can help provide same-day fulfillment of e-commerce orders placed before 4 p.m. Wow, that's phenomenal. So as long as you get orders in before 4 p.m., you can have same-day delivery. That is incredible. It's been this FC in particular has been designed to cater to large and bulky e-commerce items such as furniture and appliances. It will also operate the fulfillment of smaller items, including fashion, health, beauty, books, sports, and hobbies, which are best suited for the AMR technology. So clearly they've got some humans there. You're not going to be moving around a sofa or a sofa bed with an AMR. These things are little disc-like robots that look almost like a Roomba. So yeah, good job, eStore. Congratulations on bringing this new FC online. Congratulations. Well done. And this is certainly going to help retailers in the region to be more competitive with Amazon. Now, next piece of news. You may have seen my post earlier in the week about this. Stripe and Klarna have done a tie-up. They've done a strategic partnership whereby Klarna, the buy now, pay later service based out of Sweden and now massive globally, Klarna received over $660 million worth of VC investment earlier this year, as did Stripe. Stripe received just over $600 million of VC investment this year. They're both private companies, notoriously private, both expected to go public sometime probably within the next 12 to 18 months. They have done this strategic tie-up, which means that Klarna will now be available wherever Stripe is available to merchants that carry the Stripe payment gateway and use the Stripe payment gateway. It will become just as easy as turning on any other payment method within Stripe to offer Klarna the buy now, pay later service to your e-commerce customers, for example, and even in store if you are running the Stripe payment gateway. So congratulations to Stripe and Klarna. That is a very big deal. And I made the bold prediction that it is, it would not surprise me whatsoever if Stripe and Klarna merged before they go public. They are perfectly well suited to each other, and we've already seen Square obviously picking up Afterpay. We've seen PayPal pick up Paydi out of Japan. And we know that these big tie-ups between these major fintech platforms and buy now, pay later players, it's happening at an increasing rate. So it would not surprise me in the slightest if Stripe either acquired Klarna or they did some sort of a merger. Obviously, Klarna's valuation with that $660 million investment this year will make their valuation difficult for Stripe to swallow, but a merger is absolutely a possibility. Be interesting to see what they call a Stripe and Klarna merger, but watch this space because I think it is absolutely a possibility. Don't necessarily think it's a likelihood, but I definitely think it's a possibility as buy now, pay later services continue to be featurized and absorbed into broader fintech platforms and companies to compete on the global stage of fintech. Now, we've got some other news to announce, which is that episode 102 of the At the Coalface podcast has just been released yesterday at 11 a.m., as I do every single Thursday at 11 a.m. New Zealand time. And this particular episode was an absolute cracker. Really enjoyed it. It was with Kaus Manjita from Mason, and they are a no-code commerce revolution platform. And we really had a really good chat about the impact of the no-code and low-code revolution on the e-commerce space. Mason is an incredible piece of middleware that Kaus and her team are developing, and this is to be the glue between certain pieces of e-commerce technology and automations and marketing to be able to update all of your marketing playbooks across many different platforms, including social and owned e-commerce, all from one central hub. It's got default integrations with the likes of Shopify and Canva and other design tools, Figma, etc. So good on you guys over at Mason. It was a really enjoyable interview with Kaus. She's very, very switched on, young entrepreneur, absolutely killing it in the marketplace. Go have a listen to the podcast. I think you will absolutely get something out of it. And as I said earlier, you definitely want to go check out my multiverse discussion with Brian Walker over at the Retail Doctor Group on his podcast. That was a phenomenal show. And I was also just speaking at the B2B e-commerce show by Corinium Intelligence, which was a virtual conference held over the last couple of days. I was both a panel moderator and I was a keynote speaker at that virtual conference. Had a fantastic time. It was a B2B focused e-commerce conference, a virtual conference with many great speakers, and I had a fabulous time. So go and check that out. I think it is still available on demand, and I think it might even be free now. So go and check that out. Google the Corinium Intelligence B2B e-commerce show. Go and check that out. And last but not least, if you did not know, I have a premium newsletter that I publish once per month, plus e-alerts throughout the month called At the Coalface Digest. It's my premium e-commerce newsletter. I think it happens to be the best in the world, but hey, I'll leave that up to you to decide. And I try to cover all the e-commerce news of the month and give my take, my insight, my industry experience over the last 20 years. I overlay that over the top of the month's e-commerce omni-channel and retail tech news. So go and check that out. All you got to do is Google At the Coalface Digest, and you will be able to check that out. It is dirt cheap. So go and check that out if you haven't already. Fantastic to be with you today. That is the last of the news. Gareth, thank you very much for popping in. It is awesome to see you here. You make a good call here. You say talk about Facebook betting it all on red. Absolutely no doubt. 20,000 people working on VR, AR, and XR is no joke. They are taking this seriously serious. So interest in some market socially is sifting away from the Facebook platform. Absolutely no question about it. They've been absolutely taking a pounding in the press over the last month. Particularly as that report came out about the damage to teenage girls due to Instagram and body dysmorphia, and a whole bunch of other negative reports around the Facebook family of apps over the last month. Absolutely no question about it. They've taken a pounding. Their brand has taken a pounding. Do I think that this Meta brand change was just because of that? Absolutely not. It's very clear that Zucks has been looking at this for a very long time. As recently as 2 years ago, they announced that they already had 5,000 people working on VR at the company. It's now at 10,000, and probably within the next 12 to 18 months, 20,000. So when we look at the sheer number of dollars and people and human resources being thrown at the metaverse right now, it is absolutely staggering. And then when we take into account the number of people, bodies, investment, and billions being spent by the likes of Amazon, by the likes of Google, by the likes of Apple, by the likes of all of these major tech players, including Snap, it is just staggering how many of these players are working on very advanced AR and VR technology. So they're clearly pushing us all in that direction. I just hope that the infrastructure remains open and that the technology remains open, as opposed to becoming proprietary like the old VHS versus beta battle. We have a very open internet today with, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I would hate for every one of these companies to go down a proprietary VR and AR route. I hope that open protocols win that day, so that these platforms can all speak to each other, interact, and share data with one another, so that you don't have to buy your subscription to all of these different platforms to get access to their experiences. So thank you very much for your input, Gareth. Awesome to see you here. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you, everyone else, for joining me as well. It's been an absolute blast to be with you. I always enjoy spending this end of the week with you guys and talking about the news of the week. Have a fantastic weekend. I'll catch up with you next week. And if you don't already follow me on LinkedIn, please do so, because I try to put out really, really useful content almost every single day of the week. And I'd love to interact with you on LinkedIn. So go and check that out. And love you all. Have a fantastic weekend. Catch you next week. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.